What is your favorite song of all time? It's a question that gets asked a lot. Well, in one of my all-time pinch me moments, I got to interview the co-writer and co-singer of my favorite song ever. It's coming up next on Professor of Rock. Hey, music junkies, Professor of Rock, always here to celebrate the greatest artists and the greatest songs of all time. You know, if music moves your very soul, you're going to want to subscribe to this channel below so you don't miss an episode of our daily content, the interviews, the stories straight from the artists. Also, become a patron to help us curate this great history and keep it a daily channel. How many times have we asked someone or been asked, what is your favorite song of all time? I mean, for me, it's kind of complicated because I have like 3 lists for that particular question. There is what I consider to be the greatest song of all time, and then there's what is my mantra song of all time, or the song that defines me, and then there's my jam. Let me explain each one. Okay, so what I consider to be the greatest of all time is like movies. I consider The Godfather 1 and 2 to be the greatest films of all time. I consider it the same film, really. Flawless, symbolic, deep, monumental. But it's not my favorite movie ever, meaning I can only watch it like every 3 or 4 years. That's how some music is to me. I consider Pet Sounds to be the greatest album ever, but I can't listen to it every day or even every month. It's saved for special occasions. I mean, it saved my life at times, but again, special occasions. Then there's the list of the songs that are my mantra or life songs, that define me, like Born to Run or The Queen is Dead. But again, I can't listen to them every day. They define me in so many ways and experiences I've been through, but I have to be in a certain mood. And then there's the list that I call, I guess, my jams. Music that's so catchy and uplifting that I can listen to, these songs whenever I want. I can listen to 1,000 times and they never get old. It's like the movie Grosse Pointe Blank or Back to the Future for me. I'm always in whenever it's on. I never get sick of it. Well, for that particular list, my favorite song of all time, my jam, is this. How do I say this? It is the perfect slice of 80s perfection. It's such a catchy, joyful, hair standing straight on end 80s feel-good jam. I listen to it all the time. I love the chorus, that high falsetto part. Man, I love it. I had the opportunity to talk to the man behind that vocal and who co-wrote the song. And he had his keyboard there and he walked through the song and everything. I was blown away. Singer, keyboardist Mike Lindup from multi-platinum 80s jazz funk sensations, Level 42. One of my favorite bands of the era. So underrated, so underappreciated. He goes in depth on this classic top 10 smash from 1986, Something About You. So let's get right into it. Now, as we start, I want to thank our sponsor, Zenni Eyewear, the only frames that you'll ever need. There's so many styles to choose from, and the price is great. You want to order a pair for every day of the week, and you can. Go to Zenni.com to check it out. Here's Mike with the story of Something About You. One of my favorite songs of all time. Such a jam, such a feel-good song. Both versions. I love the longer version with the long intro.
Yeah.
Just the funk inside of that. But tell me about that, co-written by you and the guys. That hit number 7 on the Billboard Hot 100. It was number 4 on the Dance Club Songs chart, number 6 in the UK. And I've always felt like Something About You could be a song if it were used in a cool movie or something like that. Somebody needs to do that. That's why it was number 1 in my top 5 songs that need to be used from the 80s. Because I feel like it could have that big relaunch like Don't Stop Believing by Journey and Africa by Toto, because it's just one of those songs that everybody hears and they're like, man, this is such a great jam. Tell me about that song, writing it, what you remember.
Well, funny, it's it kind of grew in stature as the whole process went from the beginning to completion. It started off, we were in the rehearsals. Mark had sort of made a kind of proclamation, basically saying, listen, This is after True Colours and the preceding albums. This band could be so much bigger. You know, we could have a lot more success if we spend a bit more time writing and don't go into the studio with like half the ideas, but actually demo the songs beforehand, kind of finish them as much as we can, and really know what we're doing before we get into the studio. And so that was the plan. And so we spent a long time, and the demo of Something About You we were all very excited about. I mean, it had started off after a rehearsal. I just started playing something on the keyboard, and Phil kind of went, "What was that you just played?" I said, "What was what?" He said, "Play that again." So I just played this thing. I mean, the first thing that happened was there's the that's what I was playing when Phil said, "What's that you're playing?" I said, "I don't know, it's just this." And he said, "Play it again." And you did this thing, because that bit, I think I just did that once as a sort of throwaway thing. And he said, "No, that's really good. You should do that every time." And so that was the sort of start of the riff. And it was Wally who came up with the answer to it, which was when we were doing the demo. Wally kind of came up with the... So that was kind of Wally's contribution to the bass line. And then it was Mark that came up with the... And yeah, so, and then I came up with it. Over the same sequence, which meant that when the it's alright, they both work over that together.
Oh yeah, man, what a treat. Thank you so much. That's awesome.
And it was just the with the three chords, and sort of Phil came up with a "because there's something about you" as just those words. And we sort of presented it to Mark and Wally, and Mark had a demo studio at the top of his house, and he kind of worked on it with Wally, and he came up with the whole verse sequence with it, and the so we sort of put those bits together, and then we needed a bridge, and I came up with the and often what happened is the music would come first, and then the melodic ideas with no lyrics. Mm-hmm. And then the lyrics would come last. And you'd listen to the song and think, oh, well, obviously the lyrics inspired the music, but it was always pretty much the other way around. And so we had this demo of the song with kind of, Phil's slightly unfinished lyrics, but we knew it was going to be good. Then we went to the studio. We started laying it down, working with Julian Mendelssohn, who was a fantastic engineer. And we put down all the tracks as backing tracks, because we used to sort of do that old-fashioned thing where we play the whole song as a 4-piece, do another take, and then sometimes Phil would say, "I don't like the drums on this take, but I like the drums on this take. Can we cut it and stick it in?" So we'd literally, Julian be cutting the tape, the master tape 2-inch, slicing it together. We'd be sort of listening. Is it okay? Does it feel all right? I mean, the kids don't know. They're born these days with the cut and paste. It's so easy compared to how it was then. Anyway, we got the backing tracks, and funnily enough, out of all of the songs on World Machine, the backing track of Something About You without vocals felt really kind of leaden and uninspiring. And we were kind of distraught, because this was one of the best sounding demos. And yet when we were doing it for real, it just wasn't happening. And so Phil and Mark and Wally, they really kind of said, okay, let's see if we can beef up the drums. And so Phil added an extra snare sound, and Wally came up with a sort of bass synth thing. And, that we worked on the sound, and it's really started to happen. And then out of nowhere, Boone suddenly walked in with this whole new set of lyrics. And we looked at them, and Mark kind of looked at them, and he was kind of like more or less in charge by that stage, you know, and he kind of said, I think these are better lyrics than yours, Phil. And kind of Phil took the hump, as you can imagine. And we went, you know, behind the mics and started to sing the song. And as the lyrics went on and as the vocals went on and as the harmonies started to build up, suddenly the thing came alive and it was like, oh my gosh, what have we got here? And we invited the A&R guy from Polydor, Alan Sizer, to come in and have a listen. And he went, yep, that's a single. And so that was the lead single for World Machine. And, you know, as you said, it just was our most successful song to date. And I think part of that also was the fact that Polydor were prepared to put some money into the videos, which record companies were doing. And we had this whole catchphrase, which Mark invented, called Think Rolex. The idea was that we weren't really great actors. We didn't look as glamorous as someone like Duran Duran. But if we had a really great video for this song that looked really expensive, it might really help the song. And so we got in a proper drama director, Stuart Orme, and his company, and they came up with the treatment, which involved a lot of acting and story and not really sitting behind the instruments and just miming. And, you know, Stuart brought in Sherry Lungi to be the sort of lead female. Now, she'd just come from finishing filming The Mission with Jeremy Irons and Robert De Niro in Brazil. And now, you know, working with like Robert De Niro, the next day she's working with 4 musicians that have never acted or learned acting chops in their life. But she brought a, you know, kind of gravitas to the whole story. And, you know, Mark did the clown thing and he did that really well. And the roles seemed to be really well chosen. Phil, as the sort of tempestuous artist, really suited him down to a T. And Boone loved his sports cars, so casting him with the, you know, the AC Cobra was perfect. And then, you know, me as the sort of classical writer and coming up with stuff, and I was the one that had gone to college and studied, so it all was kind of apropos. And the fact that it didn't have a sort of obvious storyline and there were some question marks seemed to work. I mean, this is with hindsight, obviously, but we had this really, you know, great video to go with it. But the song itself just has obviously stood the test of time. And that's something that we could never have, you know, orchestrated or arranged. It just so happened that the synergy just worked. And the way that we played and the vocals and the arrangement and the timing and just everything just seemed to happen.
That's how the great ones do, it seems. But this song was acknowledged in 1991 BMI Awards for 1 million U.S. performances. As a young kid, I always wanted to go behind the song, figure out how it came together, how the magic. And it sounds like there was a true magic in the studio when he came with the lyric change. Yeah.
It was like when we came back into the control room to listen to it with all the vocals that we put on, it just had this larger than life thing. And it wasn't only the vocal performance, it was just the vocals with the music and the fact that they just blended so well. And the lyrics, and I mean, it's a love song. I mean, you know, it's obvious to say so, but it's not an A to B love song. It's a kind of, you know, going to B and C and F and then getting back there in terms of the lyrical content. But a lot of our songs are breakup songs, and there are very few that are actually, you know, I love you type songs. And Something About You is one. I think Lessons in Love is just about another. So that helped as well. We might have sold more records if we'd written a few more love songs, but then...
Well, that falsetto, I mean, as I've said before, one of the greatest falsettos recorded on a song from the 80s, in my opinion. It's one of those that I've heard it thousands of times, but it always just makes the hair on my neck stand up. Hits me right in the feels. When you were doing that falsetto, is there anything that stands out to you in the recording studio because it's a flawless performance. And what I love about it is you have your falsetto, but then Mark with his, it's this distinction of two different voices singing lyrics that are very emotionally charged. It's one of those songs that when you're in love and you hear that song, it's where the rubber hits the road.
I'll throw just a few memories as they come. It's funny, I was talking to Julian today because, I'm kind of rebuilding my studio and was just trying to remind myself of what microphones I use. This is a very sort of technical question, but I know that, different singers and different microphones seem to go together. There are a few sort of standard things, and I remember using the Neumann U87 a lot, and Julian confirmed. He said, yeah, that's the one that we used pretty much most of the time on your vocals. And I remember standing at that 87 in the studio singing, and I think this was the first time that it was suggested that I triple track the vocal. I've always been very good at double tracking. In other words, if I sing a line, I seem to instinctively kind of know what inflections I've used, and then when I do the double track, sometimes I was able to track it just naturally so well that sometimes it would almost phase itself out in places, and if it was a bit loose, then you drop in and fix it. But there wasn't that much fixing to be done. But it was suggested that on this particular line, I do a third track, as it were. So there are three of my voice blended together on that line, and I think that's part of what gives it the smoothness. Obviously it has the characteristics of my voice, but I just enjoyed it. I really enjoy singing. I enjoy doubling up melodies and adding harmonies, and we were in the hands of a fantastic engineer who really knew how to get the best out of the voice, and he had very good ears, and if you went out of tune, he's Australian and very kind of let me say he's very direct. So if you do a take, he just press the button, go tuning, which meant okay, I've sung a bum note somewhere. He wouldn't say where necessarily. But yeah, that was the recording process. And then of course reproducing it live was it was always not one of the easiest ones to do. There are certain songs that very easy to kind of reproduce live. Something About You has never been one that is particularly easy to perform. It's like you've really got to kind of work at it to get the dynamics and get everything to happen. And we've been doing it enough for years that we know how to do it. But it was always one of those songs that there was a lot of swan feet paddling under the water with this sort of serene presence on the top. And when the audience would watch it, they'd think, wow, it's effortless. But that song was never, for me anyway, was never effortless to perform. But the expression on people's faces when we perform it, made up for it.
Thank you for sharing that. That's great insight. I love, and the lyric too, it's such poetry that you're singing. So when you hear that falsetto and the undefined illusion, those diamond dreams, they can't disguise the truth. I mean, that's good stuff.
It's almost like that those lines are kind of are very, as you say, poetic and saying, what is this thing called love? How can I describe it? It's kind of beyond words. And I sing that, and then Mark's response is like, because there's something about you. In other words, maybe I can't explain it, but all I know is you are so right for me, and I can't live without you. And so there's this kind of foil that's happening. And it's Boone's genius lyrics, basically.
The other part about it is when you go into the second verse and the harmony there between you and Mark, fragile but free. We Remain Tender Together. Not So in Love. Oh my gosh.
Not so in love. It's not so wrong.
It builds that song so that when that second chorus comes around, it's game over.
Yeah, I mean, I love the fact that, you know, the kind of bass drops out in that beginning of the second chorus, but then you've got the bridge melody continuing as the chorus goes, and them sort of interlapping and working together. And I mean, also, I do my own arrangement of it sometimes in a solo situation. I'll just play it with voice and piano, and I've done that on Dominic's tours. On the last tour I did, in fact, earlier this year. He requested it. And, you know, the beauty of it is that even though none of the arrangement parts are there anymore, it's just it's slightly altered chords, but it's just the piano chords and me singing.
That there is something about you, baby, so right.
The power of the words and the melody, you know, give it the strength. And it's almost like that sort of Tin Pan Alley test where, you know, if you can't play it with a piano and a vocal or a guitar and a vocal, then it ain't a song kind of thing.
I love that. That's exactly right. When the bass drops out, how did that happen? Was that something that happened in the studio when you're recording it? Or
I would think it feels like to me that would have been something that Wally had a really good arrangement brain, and I have a feeling, I don't know if I'm right, that Wally might have suggested, why don't we try in the second chorus, just leaving the bass line, but letting the top carry it, and then sort of coming back in. And of course it gives it the whole dynamics, you know, that whole dynamics thing of, I'm playing as loud as I can. Well, maybe if you stop playing for a bit and then you come back in, then you get the dynamics. So I have a feeling that was what happened there.
Your approach to harmonies, especially in this song, you guys had very distinct harmonies. It's something that, besides the jazz funk elements, it really set you apart from everybody else. What was your approach to harmonies? I'm always curious about how bands do that, if it's something that they practice or they just go right in and do it.
Well, I think part of the kind of character of Level 42 and its harmonies is the fact that you've got people coming from different directions. So I had a kind of classical music training, having grown up in a house where, you know, my dad worked in TV and jazz arranging, and my mum, you know, was in the folk scene, and the records were from all genres. So I had that in my background. You know, Mark and Boone were kind of self-taught, if you like. And so, you know, Mark's harmonies probably come from the records he grew up listening to and that inspired him. And, you know, again, with Phil, he had a kind of semi-classical training because he went to the Royal Academy for a while. But but he was very much into African music, hence his connection with Wally. And Wally, of course, brought this French-African thing together. So when people were kind of suggesting harmonies or in the studio, you get these sort of different approaches. And so we try someone's idea, and if that didn't work, we'd modify it with someone else's idea, or we'd throw it out and try something altogether. You know, I could sort of come up with something that was quite sophisticated and maybe quite out in a jazz way, which was sometimes rejected as being, maybe that's a bit too out for this, or it's a bit too sweet and we need something more direct. And then I could modify sometimes if Mark came up with something and, okay, that note doesn't really go with that. What do you mean it doesn't go with that? Well, you know, it kind of clashes. Okay, so what should I sing? And so it would very much be a sort of group effort, because, you know, harmonies are really important, and, you know, you want to use them well and use them effectively. You don't just want to throw it all over everything, because it sort of takes away the specialness of it. And there are times where you just want a simple lead line. But we are all into harmonies, and, you know, I mean, you can hear that in the keyboard parts as well from myself and also from Wally. And you know, it was just a style we developed, and yeah, I can't really say any more than that.
Well, 35 years later, the legacy of the song is that, of course, it's played all the time on radio. My kids love it, passed on to other generations. What is the legacy for you so many years later, looking back at that song and the joy this brought to people?
Yeah, it's I mean, it's always a pleasure to hear it on the radio, or on a playlist. And, you know, I get to play my own solo version of it sometimes. And I sort of just reappreciate the song and the power of the lyrics and the emotiveness. You know, probably some of my most coveted, you know, gold discs or award discs are to do with that song. And, you know, given that we're currently in the COVID-19 pandemic where all live performance is gone, I'm very thankful for the royalties that it generates, because it is my biggest, you know, is my most successful co-written song that I've written. And whilst that's something to be very proud of as an achievement, there's always a competitive part of me that wants to, you know, somehow write something as good, or if not better than that, one day. And so that's the game to play for.
Hey, thanks so much for watching. Leave us a comment about Mike, about Level 42 in this classic hit. What is your jam? What is your favorite song for each of these lists? Or do you have 3 or 4 lists like I do? Let us know in the comments. If you like our content, we invite you to subscribe below. And we would also appreciate your support on Patreon. Help us to curate this channel, keep doing these interviews, keep the music alive. Until next time, 3 chords and the truth, my friends.